October 14, 1944. Herlingen, Germany. Field Marshal Erwin Rommel sits in his home with his wife Lucy and their 15-year-old son Manfred. Outside, a black Mercedes staff car pulls up to the house. Two generals step out, Wilhelm Burgdorf and Ernst Meisel. Rommel knows why they've come. 3 months earlier, officers attempted to assassinate Hitler with a bomb at his headquarters. The plot failed. Now Hitler's Gestapo is hunting everyone connected to the conspiracy. Rommel's name has surfaced in the investigation. The two generals carry Hitler's verdict. Rommel can face a public trial for treason, which will result in his execution and his family's disgrace and possible execution, or he can take poison within the hour. If he chooses poison, Hitler promises a state funeral with full military honors and protection for Rommel's family. What Rommel said in those final moments, to his wife, to his son, to the generals who brought Hitler's ultimatum, reveals the tragic end of Germany's most famous military commander. This is the story of October 14, 1944, the day Rommel died by his own hand under orders from the dictator he had once served. Let's go back to understand how Rommel went from Hitler's favorite general to a suspected traitor forced to commit suicide. Erwin Rommel was born November 15, 1911 in Heidenheim, Germany. Rommel joined the German army in 1910. During World War I, Rommel distinguished himself as an infantry officer, earning Germany's highest military decoration, the Pour le Mérite. Between the wars, Rommel remained in the military. When World War II began in 1939, Rommel commanded Hitler's escort battalion during the invasion of Poland. Hitler noticed Rommel's competence and energy. In 1940, Rommel received command of the 7th Panzer Division for the invasion of France. Rommel's division moved so fast and aggressively that it earned the nickname Ghost Division. It appeared where the enemy least expected. The French campaign made Rommel famous. In February 1941, Hitler sent Rommel to North Africa to reinforce Italian forces fighting the British. Rommel commanded the Africa Corps. Over the next 2 years, Rommel's tactical brilliance in desert warfare earned him international fame. Even his enemies respected him. British soldiers called him the Desert Fox. Rommel won stunning victories at Gazala and captured the fortress of Tobruk in June 1942. Hitler promoted Rommel to field marshal at age 50, the youngest field marshal in the German army. But Rommel's success didn't last. At El Alamein in October-November 1942, British forces under General Bernard Montgomery defeated Rommel decisively. Allied and British forces landed in Morocco and Algeria in November 1942. The Africa Corps was trapped between two Allied armies. Rommel flew to Hitler's headquarters in November 1942 to explain that North Africa was lost and German forces should evacuate. Hitler refused. Hitler ordered Rommel to fight to the last man. Rommel returned to Africa, but the situation was hopeless. In March 1943, Hitler recalled Rommel from Africa. The Africa Corps surrendered in May 1943. Rommel had escaped the disaster, but he had seen Hitler's refusal to face military reality. In late 1943, Hitler sent Rommel to inspect the Atlantic Wall, Germany's coastal defenses in France meant to stop an Allied invasion. Rommel found the defenses inadequate. Rommel worked frantically to improve them, but he knew they weren't strong enough. Rommel met with Hitler multiple times in early 1944 to request more resources. Hitler promised reinforcements that never came. Rommel grew increasingly frustrated with Hitler's detachment from reality. On June 6, 1944, the Allies invaded Normandy. Rommel was in Germany visiting his wife for her birthday when the invasion began. Rommel rushed back to France, but the crucial first hours were lost. Through June and July 1944, Rommel commanded German forces trying to contain the Allied invasion. The battle was brutal. Allied air superiority was overwhelming. German casualties were catastrophic. Reinforcements and supplies couldn't reach the front. Rommel wrote to Hitler and other Nazi leaders, warning that the situation in France was hopeless. Rommel's letters became increasingly blunt. Germany would lose the war. The only question was when. On July 15, 1944, Rommel wrote his most desperate letter to Hitler. Rommel stated that the military situation demanded political consequences, meaning Germany should seek peace negotiations.
This was dangerous talk. Hitler considered any suggestion of negotiation to be defeatism and treason. On July 17, 1944, British fighter planes strafed Rommel's staff car on a French road. Rommel suffered severe head injuries, a fractured skull, and damage to his left eye and cheekbone. Rommel was taken to a hospital, then moved to his home in Hurlingen to recover. 3 days later, on July 20, 1944, a bomb exploded at Hitler's East Prussia headquarters. Colonel Klaus von Stauffenberg had planted the bomb in a briefcase during a military conference. Hitler survived with minor injuries. The Gestapo launched a massive investigation. Hundreds of officers and civilians were arrested. Under torture and interrogation, names spilled out. Some conspirators mentioned Rommel. The extent of Rommel's knowledge of the plot remains unclear. Several conspirators had approached Rommel in the weeks before July 20th. They wanted Rommel to lead Germany after Hitler was removed. Rommel apparently knew something was being planned, but the evidence suggests he opposed assassination. Rommel wanted Hitler arrested and put on trial, not killed. But in the paranoid atmosphere after July 20th, distinctions didn't matter. Hitler considered any knowledge of the plot without reporting it to be treason. Rommel's name appearing in interrogations was enough. Through August and September 1944, Rommel recovered at home. He didn't know his name had surfaced in the investigation. Hitler knew. Hitler faced a dilemma. Rommel was Germany's most popular general. Rommel was a genuine war hero. Rommel was not a member of the Nazi Party. He had joined the military before the Nazis took power and maintained a professional distance from party politics.
Many Germans viewed Rommel as a good German serving a bad regime. A public trial of Rommel would be explosive. Rommel might use the trial to denounce Hitler and the Nazi leadership. Even if convicted, executing Germany's most famous general could damage morale and turn Rommel into a martyr. Hitler decided on a different solution. Give Rommel the choice to die quietly and be remembered as a hero, or face trial and die in disgrace with his family destroyed. Hitler sent 2 generals to deliver this message: General Wilhelm Burgdorf, Hitler's chief adjutant, and General Ernst Meisel from the Army Personnel Office. On the morning of October 14, 1944, Burgdorf and Meisel arrived at Rommel's home. Rommel's aide, Captain Hermann Aldinger, saw them arrive. Burgdorf was known as a hard-drinking Nazi loyalist. His presence was not a good sign. Burgdorf and Meisel asked to speak with Rommel privately. They went into Rommel's study. What happened in that room comes from Rommel's later conversation with his family and from post-war statements by Manfred Rommel and Captain Aldinger. Burgdorf informed Rommel that his name had appeared in testimony from the July 20 conspirators. Hitler considered Rommel guilty of treason. Burgdorf presented Rommel with 2 options. Option 1, face the People's Court, the Nazi tribunal that tried political crimes. The verdict was predetermined, guilty. The sentence would be death, likely by hanging with piano wire, as many July 20 conspirators had been executed. Rommel's family would be arrested. His wife and son might be sent to concentration camps. His pension would be revoked. His reputation would be destroyed as a traitor. Option 2, take poison within the next few minutes. Die quietly. Hitler would announce that Rommel died from his head injuries. He would receive a state funeral with full military honors. His family would be protected and would receive his full pension. His reputation as Germany's greatest general would remain intact. Burgdorf made clear this was not a request. Rommel had 15 minutes to decide. The 2 generals left Rommel alone in his study. Rommel sat thinking. Then he walked upstairs to find his wife Lucy and son Manfred. Rommel's words to his family in those final moments are documented through Manfred Rommel's later accounts. Manfred Rommel wrote about this day in Harmshire. Lucy was devastated. Manfred, at 15, struggled to understand what was happening. Rommel spoke calmly. He told them he had decided to take the poison. A trial would be a farce. The verdict was already decided. His execution would be certain. But worse, the family would suffer. If he died quietly, at least they would be protected. Rommel said goodbye to his wife and son. Manfred later recalled his father's composure. Rommel had faced death many times in 2 world wars. He faced it now without visible fear. Rommel asked his wife not to cry in front of the two generals. He wanted to die with dignity. Rommel went back downstairs. He called Captain Aldinger into the study. Aldinger was Rommel's longtime aide and friend. Rommel told Aldinger what was happening. Rommel gave Aldinger instructions for handling his papers and personal effects. Rommel spoke to Aldinger about the charges. Rommel said, "I have never been a traitor." Rommel insisted he had always served Germany faithfully, even when he disagreed with Hitler's decisions. Rommel told Aldinger to look after Lucy and Manfred. Then, Rommel shook Aldinger's hand and said goodbye. Rommel put on his Afrika Korps leather jacket, the jacket he had worn in the desert campaigns that made him famous. He placed his field marshal's baton under his arm. He walked out of his house. Bergdorf and Meisel were waiting by the staff car. Rommel climbed into the back seat. Bergdorf got in next to him. Meisel got in the front passenger seat. The drivers started the car. The car drove away from the house up a nearby hill. After about 5 minutes, the car stopped on a quiet section of road. What happened in the car in those final minutes is known from Bergdorf and Meisel's later statements. Bergdorf handed Rommel a small glass vial containing cyanide poison. Rommel took the vial. Rommel's last recorded words were to Bergdorf. Rommel said, "Tell my family I shall be dead in a quarter of an hour." Hitler's machinery immediately went into action. The official announcement stated Rommel died from his July 17th head injuries. No mention was made of suicide or the treason investigation. Hitler ordered a state funeral. On October 18, 1944, Rommel's funeral was held in Ulm City Hall. Field Marshal Gerhard von Rundstedt gave the eulogy, praising Rommel's military genius and loyalty to Germany. Lucy and Manfred attended the funeral, knowing the truth but unable to speak it. Nazi officials and military officers filled the hall. Hitler sent a massive wreath but did not attend personally. The German public mourned Rommel as a fallen hero. They did not learn the truth about his death for years. Lucy and Manfred kept Hitler's bargain. They stayed silent about the forced suicide. The Nazi regime protected them. Lucy received Rommel's full pension. Manfred was not harmed. After the war ended in May 1945, the truth about Rommel's death gradually emerged. Bergdorf committed suicide in Berlin as Soviet forces captured the city. He took cyanide just as he had forced Rommel to do. Captain Aldinger survived the war and confirmed Rommel's account of what happened on October 14th. Manfred Rommel later wrote and spoke extensively about his father's final day. Manfred went on to have a distinguished career. He served as mayor of Stuttgart from 1974 to 1996. Throughout his life, Manfred defended his father's reputation while acknowledging the moral complexity of serving Hitler's regime. The question of Rommel's guilt remains debated. Rommel's death reveals several truths about Nazi Germany in 1944. First, Hitler had become so paranoid that even his most successful generals were not safe. Second, Hitler valued propaganda over justice. He needed Rommel dead, but couldn't afford the public spectacle of trying and executing Germany's most popular general. Third, Hitler's regime had become so murderous that offering someone the choice of how they would die counted as mercy. What Rommel said in his final moments shows a man trying to protect his family while maintaining his dignity. Rommel's words to Manfred, "In a quarter of an hour I shall be dead," show his acceptance of the situation. His words to Aldinger, "I have never been a traitor," show his insistence on his own honor. His last words to Bergdorf, "Tell my family I shall be dead in a quarter of an hour," show his concern for his family until the very end. Rommel died at age 52, 6 months before Germany's final defeat. Had he lived, he likely would have faced Allied war crimes investigation for his service in Hitler's military, though Rommel's conduct in North Africa was generally considered professional and he was not accused of war crimes. Instead, Rommel's forced suicide made him a tragic figure, a talented general who served an evil regime, who turned against that regime too late, and who died protecting his family from the regime's revenge. October 14, 1944, remains one of the darkest days in German military history, the day Hitler murdered his most famous general and called it an honorable death. Disclaimer: this video presents historical events based on Manfred Rommel's documented accounts, witness testimony from Captain Aldinger,
post-war testimony and verified historical records. Rommel's final words and the details of his death come from these sources. The extent of Rommel's knowledge of the July 20 plot remains debated among historians.